Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything right here on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, and I'm coming off my 27th E3? I know people don't call it E3 anymore. I still kind of do. Actually, a lot of outlets are calling it not E3 because we just don't really have a good name to kind of call all this stuff that happens during the first week and a half of June. And that's kind of what we've settled on until we have something more permanent. And I do hope that something comes eventually that is a little more concrete and a little more permanent and has a real name. But anyway, sorry we missed doing last week's episode because of not E3 and all the work involved with that, plus the 10th anniversary of Sifted. It's been an insane week for me. I'm ready to do this awesome show thanks to you people. If you like this show, head to patreon.com/sifted. Give us a pledge there. If you pledge for $4 a month, you get all our content early, but if you pledge at $7 per month, that is the Ask Shane tier, and that's absolutely why this show keeps happening. We have great questions once again, though not any Naughty 3 questions, which is a little weird. Let's get to them. Okay, first up we have a question from Gregor G. One thing I noticed with the Switch 2 launch is that none of Nintendo's games are made in a realistic art style. One can assume it makes them cheaper to make than more realistic games for Xbox or PlayStation. Do you think developers of AAA games will start using simple art styles like Bungie did with Destiny to curtail costs? Do you think a large project like The Witcher 4 will be profitable? What are your thoughts? Okay, Gregor, well, the first thing I would say is that generally your observation is true, that Nintendo typically creates games that do not have realistic art styles. They're usually cartoony, or at least I think most people would agree juvenile, targeted towards a younger audience, looks like Saturday morning cartoons, things like that. Yes, I think that's a stylistic choice, but is it something that publishers and developers would look at as a monetary issue? Now, first of all, great question, Gregor. No one's ever really asked anything like this before. And to be fair, you're right. It is easier to create games that look good based on a cartoony or a surreal art style versus something that is realistic. That is just intrinsic to the human condition. That's why there's such a thing called the uncanny valley, which is where video games try to get close to reality. But the closer that they get to reality, the more obvious it is that there are little things that tip you off to the fact that it is not reality. And games are kind of there right now. We're kind of in that uncanny valley where everything looks so realistic, it's like borderline photorealism, and there's that one little thing that you notice, you're like, okay, that's a game. That's kind of where we're at with the industry right now, and you're absolutely right. If you create a game with a cartoony art style or a surreal art style where people do not have a frame of reference to compare it to, it's much easier to get away with issues in your game, anomalies, graphical problems, and things like that. Now back to the root of the question, though, I think you're asking is, should or do developers do this on purpose to save money? I would say, while nothing is ever absolute, and I'm sure there are some developers or publishers that are doing that, I think the vast majority of the people creating games do not think about that at all. I think they're just creating the vision of the art that they have in mind. And sometimes that's a realistic look, sometimes that's a cartoony look. Again, I think maybe there's a couple anomalies, a couple devs and publishers that are like, yeah, man, if we make this game look all cartoony, like it's hard for people to nitpick it and we can make it look good more easily. That is true. I mean, also with like a sort of a flat looking cartoony art style, you don't need as many sort of graphical tricks that a lot of the big budget games need, ray tracing and things like that. You can get away without a lot of that stuff with very simple looking games. So it is true, in fact, that it is easier to develop games with an art style that is cartoony or childish or surreal in some way. There's no doubt about that. I do not believe, however, that developers are sacrificing their creative vision that they have for profits, although some might. But I think most people that are making games are like, this is what I want the game to look like. They don't think about how much it's going to cost to actually create that look. So I do not think that developers or publishers will start leaning towards Nintendo's art style to try to make more money. Even Nintendo isn't 100% cartoony, but to your point, if you look at their games like Xenoblade, where they try to have visuals that are a little more realistic, they do not stack up well against PlayStation and Xbox games. So to that point that you're correct. Now, on to The Witcher 4. Because The Witcher 4 obviously uses crushingly realistic visuals. And I think we just saw in that new Unreal Engine 5 demo that they put out for the game, what they're targeting, what they're trying to get at. Will it sell? Yes, it's going to sell. It's going to go bonkers. This is in Cyberpunk 2077. This is The Witcher 4. After a bunch of people, like 60 million people, bought The Witcher 3. So they know what they're getting into. They know what they want. They want realistic looking visuals. And based upon what we've seen in that tech demo and in the trailer for the game, any media they've released for it so far, it looks absolutely stunning. So if that's what they're targeting, even if they don't quite get there, I think the game's going to look really, really good still. And so, yes, I think it will sell very, very well. I think other AAA, big budget games that focus on realistic art styles, as long as the games are good, they're going to continue to sell. I guess maybe what I'm getting at here is that the art style isn't as important as you think, except when I think you're targeting younger audiences. I think younger audiences probably, the 5 to 10-year-olds, probably do resonate a little bit more with cartoony looking visuals and stuff like that. But once you get above that age range, I don't think it really matters. People are just looking to buy really good art. Okay, next up, our question comes from Khalib Twalai. What's your 2 cents on the right to own controversy in gaming? At some point, we ended up paying the same price, but lost actual ownership of our library. Do you think this is good or bad for consumers in the long run? Oh boy, you picked a good topic here, because this one definitely gets me fired up. Look, I totally realize that anyone over the age of 35, if they complain about something, they sound like some 80-year-old dude screaming, "Get off my lawn." Roll the memes, say whatever you want about me. I'm not that guy, just so you know. But the truth of the matter is that the consumers have allowed this to happen. They want this to happen. That's the difference. Usually when bad stuff like this happens to consumers, it's forced upon the consumer by the people making the products, and it's something that the consumer does not want. Because let's be honest, there is no world where physical games going away is a good thing. No world. It's like the world we're living in right now is fine. It's like if you don't want physical games, don't buy them. I do want physical games, and I do buy them. And that's great. Everybody gets what they want. But we're headed to the point where there are going to be no physical games, or physical games are just going to be the special thing that these companies do to try to get you to spend an extra $40 on the collector's edition or whatever. Is headed towards an all-digital future. And that's because of all of us. Now, not me. I fight for physical games. I still buy physical games, but I am a part of us. And so it's all on us. I haven't convinced you guys to keep buying physical games, so in some ways I failed, and I'm partly responsible for it. So I think all of us own a little bit of this, honestly, physical games going away. There is no argument that you can make that a digital game is better than a physical game. None. I don't know how so many of us have been tricked into believing that digital is better. You don't own it. You're basically paying the publisher money to rent their game. It's basically Blockbuster Video in 2025. That's where we're at. I buy physical games. I don't get every game for free from publishers. Sometimes I have to buy games, and I buy the physical version because I can buy the physical version, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a collector anymore. I have stopped collecting game stuff. I don't have any more room to collect any more game stuff, so I'm not a collector anymore. So I will keep a couple games that I'm like, yeah, maybe in 10 years I want to play that again. I probably never will. But I say that to myself, so I do keep a couple games, but for the most part, I play a game, cover it for you guys on GameFace or here on Ask Shane or wherever, and then I sell it. I give it to my wife, and she puts it up on her eBay channel, and I get about, 70% of that game's value back as long as I'm not waiting too long to sell it. So that's a lot of money. Now we're talking about $80, $100 games. You're getting $60, $70 back on that $80 or $90 game. That's a lot. I have no idea why you guys have decided that this is bad. I'm not going to rail on you guys. Everyone has their own lives. Some of you guys live in small places where you can't afford to collect stuff or keep stuff. I get all that. It's been that way in Japan for a really long time, but it still makes no sense. I get it. You don't want to have a stack of something sitting around. Maybe I get it. We're all going to be living in this world where we all sit in white boxes with nothing. It's like there's a certain... how do you explain it? There's a certain level of cozy and comfort that you get living at home when there's stuff there. I feel like our homes are turning into prison cells where we go home and it's just all white walls and there's just nothing there. And look, I'm a minimalist. I also like modern furnishings, modern plate. I like that stark, almost empty look, but with important stuff in there still. I feel like we're headed to where nobody has anything. So again, some people like that feeling of being free and they're not weighed down by some anchor of stuff that they've bought. I feel a little bit of that. I'm getting rid of a bunch of house music records that I've been collecting for years. I'm getting rid of a bunch big chunks of my game collection right now I don't want to drag around anymore. But it feels like it's gone to the extreme. And the bottom line is you guys are getting ripped off. Even if you don't want to sell that physical game now. For example, I have a bunch of old physical games. When I die, my wife's going to be able to sell those, and she's going to have a nice little chunk of money to help pay for my funeral, whatever the hell else she needs money for. But the bottom line is there's value there. You are just giving it all away to the game publishers and developers. I do respect that everyone has different opinions, but I think it's absolutely idiotic. I mean, it's almost become like a flex to say that I'm cool with video game developers and publishers ripping me off. Like, a lot of you guys are proud that you don't like physical games anymore and you don't want physical games. You're basically saying, like, yeah, rip me off, go for it. Okay, our last question for this week's episode comes from Kevin. Can you mention a no-brainer that has yet to happen in the games industry? It could be a revival of a game, developer working on something specific, or something entirely different. Well, Kevin, the first no-brainer is the topic I just discussed. That it is better to have a physical game or buy a physical game. Even if you don't want to keep the physical game, you can sell it and get rid of it and get your money back. That's a no-brainer. Again, I have no idea why you guys have been like hoodwinked into believing that digital games are better than physical games. Even if you just buy a physical game, just sell it and get your money back if you don't want to keep it and you don't want the physical. Anyway, if you can't tell, that topic really fires me up. Let's talk about something a little more obvious. Here's something that nobody asked me about really no one asked me any Summer Game Fest / Not E3 2025 questions. But here's something to me that is blatantly obvious that needs to change and is a no-brainer is cut out a lot of these Not E3 shows or just cut them down. It is a joke. I sat and watched these shows other than like the Jeff's thing, which we'll get to that. But the PlayStation thing and the Xbox things were okay. Jeff's thing was not. Jeff's show was like 70% indie games. And look, I get it. There's some of you guys and girls that love indie games. And that's all you want to play. And F the big budget games. And F the big publishers. Let's give the money to the... I hear you. I've heard you for years now. I get that there's some people out there like that. Most people are not that way. If some random person tuned into these shows other than the Xbox and the PlayStation show, they'd be like, this industry sucks. Where are the games for me? You could watch Keely's thing for 2 hours and like the average person who buys less than 10 games a year are like, there was 2 games I care about in there. This industry isn't for me anymore. I'm out. These shows are not helping the industry. I understand why these publications are doing it. Because if you can find a sponsor that's willing to give you $200K to have their logos slapped all over your live stream and all over the archive videos, and you can talk about it, thanks to blah, blah, blah for supporting this thing that nobody cares about and nobody watches. Like, look, if you can convince a sponsor to do that, more power to you. That's great. Look, I understand right now that websites are fighting for their lives. I get it. But this is not the way to do it. As far as like engendering people into the games industry and getting more people interested in it, or, in all honesty, getting more people to go to your website. Like, beyond whatever dollars you're making from your sponsorships, I believe that these things that you're doing are just hurting you. They're just awful. It's like, look, man, I've been into games since I was like 4. I've been reviewing games for 30 years. I love indie games. I realize a lot of the new ideas come from them. I don't need to see 50 of them in 2 hours. Nobody does. But that's all there is. There aren't enough. It's like this whole industry is living like it's still 2010, when we were getting literally like 100 games released every month. And now we have, like, as far as like big budget games are concerned, like 5 or 6. There aren't enough games to keep doing this. All these little indie... Look, no disrespect to IGN, their show was complete nothing. It was nothing. I don't understand why anybody would go to that. I don't get it. I don't understand what these people are doing. I'm sure IGN had sponsors out the yin yang for this. They can say, you know, we do, that's not, our audience is this size, and even if 5% watch it, it's still gigantic. I can see where IGN definitely locked down sponsors for this stuff, and therefore, why not go through with it? You're going to make money or whatever. But a lot of these other ones, they're just like, the indie is your friend show. Like, who cares? I feel like these things are a detriment to our industry, and it's just these publications trying to cut in and get their little slice of E3 that Jeff has left behind, the breadcrumbs, basically, that Jeff has left behind Summer Game Fest. So, To me, the no-brainer is get rid of all these damn naughty E3 shows that are just filled with indie games that nobody gives a damn about. All right, that's it for this fiery edition of Ask Shane Anything right here on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I still can't believe nobody asked me any questions about E3. Y'all slipping. Anyway, maybe you want to get some in for next week's episode, because we definitely need questions for next week's show. We are low. Get in there, go to the header at Sifted.net, click the link there, go into our forums, ask me a question. If you're pledging at that Ask Shane tier at $7 or more per month, you get priority when asking questions. You can pretty much guarantee your questions are going to make it into this show. But everybody gets to ask questions. Everybody gets to watch the show day one. As long as you're pledging at that $4 or more per month, everything's all good. So thanks for your support. Hope you guys enjoyed Not E3 2025. We'll see you next week.